I want to start off, as always, by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harakah, Kodash, and double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth and will lead as examples to the flock. Salutations, peace, and blessing to the elect, starting with the 144,000, and to the large multitude, the men, women, and children whom the Lord has foreordained to receive mercy through Yahweh Shai's sacrifice. Shalom. This lesson was inspired by a YouTube video that I was watching this morning, that goes into the consumerism, lifestyle that exists, particularly in the West, being centered, of course, around the American culture. But we know that, consumerism has spread, to many parts of the world, not even just the West, but, throughout Eastern empires such as Japan, South Korea, China. This idea or this corruption that they call consumerism, has invaded and infected, people all over the world, really and truly. But it mainly, or you will see the most infections are the worst infections, the festering sores over here in the West, especially in America. Now, this lesson may be on the longer side. This is an article that I found on consumerism that I believe to have a lot of, through the Spirit, this article has a lot of really good information about how consumerism came about and how through consumer engineering, what they call it, and downright witchcraft, the powers that be have created, speaking about, large corporations, the people who run the system, which is pretty much capitalism and consumerism, have used certain mechanisms and witchcraft, to create a culture of indefinite, and infinite consumption, in the people. So without further ado, I'm gonna, get into it. Like I said, this article is a fairly long read, and I wanted to go through most, if not all of it, and bring out a few precepts along the way. Right? So this article was written back in 2021, June 22, 2021, and it's entitled "Consumer Engineering: The Origins of Buying More Than We Need." It says humans have always used and used up stuff to fill their bellies, cover their bodies, and put a roof above their heads. Throwing away or consuming more than necessary was taboo for most of human history. Thriftiness and frugality were virtues of prosperity for many millennia, which pretty much means you're careful with things, you're careful with money especially, right? The more you saved, the more you had. Fast forward to the 21st century, and everything is the opposite. Prosperity lies in spending. So that's the new mantra that was pushed. Right, and we're going to see how, that was pushed and why, right? Prosperity lies in spending. The more you spend, the more you contribute to the economic growth, which leads to prosperity. And the reason why, before I even go further, the reason why this economy is, it needs, continual growth, or it needs continual consumption in order to survive, is because it's a debt-based economy. These corporations and businesses run off debt. The countries run off debt. So without continual and infinite consumption, right, and infinite economic growth, there is no possibility of survival, because you need growth in order to pay back the loans that you've taken and service the interests that accumulate with those loans. So the only way to do that is to continually grow. So if you have a business and you don't have an infinite growth, economic growth, then you fall by the wayside, right? Let me continue. Frugality and thriftiness have disappeared without a trace, and ever bigger homes crammed with stuff we never use become the standard measure of success. Prosperity equals growth, even if that growth, the continuous acquisition of stuff, is a reason for anxiety, social detachment, and depression. And we see that. We see that more and more evidently now because of social media. Social media has brought to light a lot of issues that were once, not easily seen, and it has also made worse a lot of issues that were pretty much simmering in the background, right? But now we can see more and more social media and the internet has given us access, to see into the lives of the decadent, the degenerate, and how they're living and how they're wasteful, and also the dark side of that, the anxiety that comes with that, the social depression, the social detachment, the depression, and pretty much just the moral decay altogether, right? So it says, how did we get here? How have hundreds of years of frugality got replaced by manic excitement for new stuff a few short decades later? And we see that, with people lining up, in front of an Apple store for the new iPhone to be released. We see that in the crazy Black Friday sales, that used to happen, that don't seem to be happening anymore, at least at those large scales. Here in Jamaica, a Krispy Kreme donut shop opened, I think, several months ago, and people literally camped out in front of the store the night before in order to be among the first people who went into the store, because they were promised a year supply of free donuts, which they know they don't need. But just that idea of overconsumption, of just feeding the flesh, has been so ingrained into the lifestyle and the habits of people nowadays that they've pretty much become slaves to it. So it says, it all started in the US around the turn of the 20th century. The economy grew 4 times faster than the population thanks to the Industrial Revolution and a relatively peaceful period. By the 1920s, there were more products on the market than people could ever buy. And the thing is, people inherently, right, we in this flesh, we inherently have, that insatiable desire, right? And what marketing has done is pretty much to tap into that degenerate nature that we have within us, of consistently wanting more, consistently desiring new and shiny things, right? Let's get a few precepts on that before we continue. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 20 says, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. In a recent video that I did, I went into what is called the hedonic treadmill, right? Which pretty much means, in layman's terms, is that you're never permanently satisfied with an increase in anything in your life, whether that be positive or negative, because the negative is also true. If you go through a particularly negative emotional experience, you quickly recover, and relatively quickly recover, and you go back to baseline, But the same goes for positive experiences. If you go through positive experiences, like for example, you buy a new car, you buy a new phone, anything like that, quickly after that, very soon after that, you get used to having that new thing. You get used to living in that new house or having that higher salary, to the point where it no longer makes you happy. It just becomes commonplace. So you're not satisfied. The flesh is never satisfied, right? This is Ecclesiastes 5 and verse 10. He that loveth silver shall never be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them, and what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes, right? And this is the dilemma that society is in. They love silver, they love abundance, and they continually crave it, but they're never satisfied, because you crave that new device, you crave that new car, that promotion, that higher salary, whatever it is that you crave, that new girl that you see, at your workplace or at the gym or whatever it is. And the moment you achieve whatever it is that you were lusting after, that you were coveting, right, you're happy for a very short period, and then soon after, you're craving something else. You're craving the next new shiny thing that you don't have, Let's get back to the article before we get, here. So let's go to the first quote, right? Matter of fact, let me read out this paragraph here. So it says, it all started in the US around the turn of the 20th century. The economy grew 4 times faster than the population, thanks to the Industrial Revolution and a relatively peaceful period. By the 1920s, there were more products on the market that people could buy or would buy, right? The textile mills of this country can produce all the cloth needed in 6 months operation each year, and that 14% of the American shoe factories could produce a year's supply of footwear. It may be that the world's needs ultimately will be produced by 3 days work a week, right? And this was from James J. Davis, Secretary of Labor in 1927. The leaders of the economy found themselves in this unfamiliar situation of overproduction, or as they saw it, under consumption, right? To find a solution for this imbalance, the leaders had to choose between two options: slow down production to match the demand by reducing working hours, or increase consumption to fuel economic growth by motivating people to buy more. And of course, they went with the second option because the second option feeds their pockets. It's all about the capitalism. It's all about feeding the wealthy, right? Because as we read further and further into this article, right, you will see that the ones who benefit are the ultra rich, the ones who are at the top of the food chain, who owns these companies, right? Let's go on. It says, we live in a world built on this crucial decision. By the staggering amount of persuasive advertising and the million tools making it ever easier to consume, it is not difficult to deduct which direction they decided to take. It was option 2, molding the ordinary person into a consumer to feed the momentum of capitalism. And the article is going to go into how they engineered people, they call it consumer engineering, in order to make them more susceptible to buying more and to overconsumption, right? Which a lot of it is actual witchcraft, right? So it says, we have learned that prosperity lies in spending, not in saving. The increased profits come from the increased production made possible by increased consumption. And like I said before, we live in a debt-based economy. Corporations, hell, even countries run on debt. In order for you to be profitable in a debt-based economy, you have to be continually growing. You need infinite growth. If you don't have infinite growth, if you're not continually growing, you won't be able to service the debt that you have. Because if you borrow $1 million and you're bringing in $1 million, how are you going to pay the interest on that $1 million, right? So, and then on top of that, the money that we use is debt-based money, and that money continually ever loses value. So then it also requires you to gain more of it in order to live the same lifestyle that you have, or to live a better lifestyle. So infinite growth is needed to exist in this flawed economy, right? The leaders faced a difficult challenge, though. They had to find a way to erase frugality and thriftiness from the value system of the masses and replace it with spending and throwaway culture, right? It was no easy or quick transformation, but thanks to the collaborative efforts of contemporary intellectuals, industrialists, and politicians, aka the powers that be, it was a success. And now we have something called haul culture, HAUL, where young people just buy a bunch of random stuff that they don't need, technology, clothes. They have a thing they call Shein haul, where they just buy a bunch of useless crap on Shein, and some people buy a bunch of makeup and they just video themselves opening it up, and people just go crazy over that shit. They get millions of followers, and they make money off that. They commercialize consumption. Right? Let's continue. The leaders faced a challenge, though. They had to find a way to erase. Oh, I read that already. Salakia. Let's continue. All right. Here enters Edward Koudrick, right? An economist and management advisor, talked about the new economic gospel of consumption, in which workers must be educated in the new skills of consumption. Ernest Elmo Calkins, an acknowledged advertising executive, coined the term consumer engineering to describe the necessary tools and processes for this invaluable education. Here's a quote from Ernest. Goods falls into two classes: those we use, such as motor cars, safety razors, and those we use up, such as toothpaste, soda biscuit. Consumer engineering must see to it that we must use up the kinds of goods we now merely use. Would any change in the goods or the habits of people speed up their consumption? Can they be displaced by new models? Can artificial obsolescence be created? consumer engineering does not end until we consume all that we make. All right, let's look up that word obsolescence, right, and see what it means here. So the word obsolescence means the process of something becoming obsolete, outdated, and no longer used. And you see it you see it mostly with technology, with gadgets. The new phone comes out, your one feels, it feels obsolete because the new one is so nice and shiny and sometimes I've fallen into that trap. New car comes out and you're like, that's really cool. I want that, even though there's nothing wrong with your car and your car is, it's performing really well. But that new one, man, it has something different. And J. Cole went into this in one of his songs called Love Yours, because there's always going to be something out there that's just a little bit better than what you have, right? It was a large scale systematic application of the four fundamental practices of consumer engineering that led to the successful transformation into a consumer society. So the first one is planned obsolescence. Perceived obsolescence is the second one, then advertisement and PR, and then consumer credit. We'll see how much we can get through. So planned obsolescence. Industry leaders realized that selling high quality, long lasting goods is almost like digging their own graves. As people filled up their homes with stuff that lasted for decades, the demand for new stuff shrank. This was bad news for businesses, since continued economic growth is only possible if sales keep growing year by year. Planned obsolescence came to the rescue. The idea is simple: intentionally shortening the lifespan of a product by smart engineering to motivate, quote unquote, people to buy more often. But if your product breaks earlier, consumers are obviously going to turn to a competitor for a longer lasting product. How do you compete in such a market? You make a pact with the competition to produce equally sucky stuff, right? And this here proves that all of these corporations are in a conspiracy, if you want to call it that. Because really and truly, that's what it is. It's a common plan. Everybody came together with this common plan, as we want to read now, to make shit not last as long, right? The Phoebus cartel is a well-known example. Before the cartel came alive, a light bulb had 2,000 hours of life. As the market was saturating, major manufacturers like GE, which is General Electric, Osram, and Philips agreed to decrease the life of a light bulb to 1,000 hours. That's a 100%, 50% reduction, right? Making products worse was an equally demanding engineering task as improving them. So all companies devoted substantial efforts to reduce the lifespan with just the right amount. The agreement prescribed fees for companies produces longer lasting bulbs. The more hours the bulb exceeded the agreed 1,000 hours, the higher the fee was. This right here, what we just read, is an example of a conspiracy, right, to make shit not last as long so that you can continually buy more, right? Perceived obsolescence. Even if stuff broke faster, there was an observable limit of how much people wanted to consume, not enough to keep the wheel of capitalism rolling towards the never-ending economic growth. Remember, the memories of thriftiness and frugality still lingers at this time, and people are not used to buying things for the sake of just buying it. To overcome this problem, the leaders of the economy needed to invent other reasons for people to consume. Enters perceived obsolescence, right? Which means the thing is not obsolete, it's still useful, but they have changed your perception to view it as obsolete. To say, you know what, your phone, it needs to go. It's working fine, but you know what? It's too slow now. The new one is faster. Get this new one, right? Boom. Let's continue on, right? So it says, in case of perceived obsolescence, the product can be in a perfect condition, but made to feel obsolete by the newer, shinier versions. The old model is outdated, does not follow the coloring trend, and thus ruins the images of the owners. And people are so driven by image, People are so driven by what other people think of them, by social comparison, really and truly. And that drives a lot of decisions that people make. Spending a lot of money to have this flashy wedding, posting your extravagant and vacation trips on online on Instagram or whatever. Some even faking, those trips, editing their photos and all that good stuff in order to make their life look more glamorous than it actually is. You know, all this is so that you can look good in the eyes of other people, because in this Western world that we live in, this corrupt, world that we live in, a lot of people gain validation from how other people see them, right? So they'll be tricked into thinking that, if I don't have the new iPhone, if I don't have this new Prada bag or this new other stuff, whatever it is, right? Then, I'm not gonna fit in. So then you have this idea of the FOMO culture, the fear of missing out. You're gonna be an outcast because you don't have the new iPhone, you don't have the new Samsung, you don't have a Birkin bag or whatever it is. You can't afford to take such trips. Your car is too old. So in order to overcome that fear of missing out, or to feel like you're a part of the group, or to gain validation from social comparison, you get that new stuff, right? So it says we must shift America from a needs to a desires culture, right? People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old had been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desire must overshadow his needs, right? And this is Paul Mazur, a partner at Lehman Brothers, right? So it goes on to say Henry Ford is an illustrative example of the shift. In 1922, he said, "We want a man who buys one of our cars never to have to buy another one, and that any consumer can have a car painted any color that he wants so long as it is black." Charles Kettering, the head of research at General Motors, on the other hand, perfectly understood the importance of mechanism of perceived obsolescence. In 1929, he advocated for keeping the consumer dissatisfied, right? He didn't mean producing subpar automobiles, right? Rather, offering different colors and designs every year to evoke dissatisfaction and spark desire for the new one. So you see a new thing come out, and really and truly the only difference is they're offering a new color, right? And just because that new color means that you have the new thing, right? When you get that new color, people are gonna see that and say, "Oh, he has the latest one." So you're gonna get it because simply for that reason, Continuing on, so it says, let me just jump to advertising and PR because I wanted to get to the Edward Bernays stuff before I jump back into the scriptures. It says, artificially induced desire is a key cog in the mechanism of consumerism. While perceived obsolescence was focused on making people buy the new version of an old product, people also needed to be educated to buy more stuff they never knew they wanted. Advertising was used to constantly expose people to the stuff they could have and the stuff the Joneses already had. The pervasive message of more is better and what you have is not enough was effective, and eventually most of the US jumped on the consumerism bandwagon. PR, on the other hand, was much more subtle. With product placement and celebrity endorsement, the target was not even aware that he or she had been influenced. Edward Bernays, that demon, the father of PR, right, learned the craft of psychology from his uncle Freud, which is Sigmund Freud. He had the necessary psychological insight into how to manipulate the subconscious. He argued that businesses cannot afford to wait until the public asks for its product. It must maintain constant touch through advertising and propaganda to assure itself the continuous demand which alone will make its costly plant profitable. Beside the business implication, Bernays clearly saw the influence of advertising and PR on political power. In his book Propaganda, he explains the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Meaning, if I give you the choice, because democracy is all about choice, don't it? Freedom of choice, you vote for who you want, nice. If I give you that, if I give you the power to choose, but I want to make sure that certain men go into power, that certain laws are passed, you know what I need to do? I need to influence you, right? To vote for who I wanted to vote for, to vote for whatever laws I wanted to vote for, and so on and so forth. So we need to manipulate the organized habits and opinions of the masses. How do we do that? We do that through social media. We do that through advertising. We do that through mass media, like the news. We do that through movies. We do that through music, right? And so people are influenced and manipulated subconsciously and not even realizing it. A lot of people think that the opinions that they come up with day by day are their own inherent opinions, that they come from them within, when really and truly they're just influenced by popular culture. Right? Reading on, it says, those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. Not your politicians, the men that decide who are going to be in office, aka the capitalists, the men who have the money, right? The Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and the DuPonts of the world, right? Companies like BlackRock, right? Vanguard. Those are the companies that decide the policies that exist, that decide on what is right or wrong for you to think, right? So it continues to say, whatever attitude one chooses to take toward this condition, it remains a fact that we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Right? So I wanted to get into more precepts before this lesson got too long. Hopefully y'all are still with me. All right, so this is going into the rulers that be who make money off of this system, and are pretty much insatiable. All right, this is Ezekiel 28, and I'll start from verse 2. Son of man, say to the prince of Tyrus, thus saith the Lord power. And we're using this now to also refer to the powers that be here, the gods of capitalism, if you want to call them that, the elite that rule this world, right, which is a capitalist elite, right? Thus saith the Lord power, behold thine heart is lifted up, and though I said, I am a God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, which refers to people, right? Yet thou art a man and not God, and thou set thine heart as God. They feel that they are God because what? Because just as we just read by the quote from Edward Bernays, they are able to manipulate the minds and the habits and the opinions of the masses. If you're able to do that, you're going to fancy yourself a God, right? Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel, there is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom, with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches, and thou hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy wisdom, thy riches, right? And the word traffic goes into trade, commerce, right? And thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches, right? This is Isaiah 56 and 10. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. So meaning the people who you set over you, that's going into your politicians, your pastors, your leaders in the community. They're all blind too because they've taken the bag, right? And then the ones above them, right, are living lavishly off their blindness. And your blindness too that are underneath the ones that are there on the blind watchmen, right? They cannot bark, right? Why does it say they cannot bark? Because a dog barks to warn you of danger, right? So them not barking is not them not warning you of the dangers that exist, right? Of these men who are conspiring, right, to keep you in this consumerism trap, right? Lying down, loving to slumber. And here's the point. They are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. They are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, everyone for his gain from his own quarter. Come, ye, they say, I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink, and tomorrow shall be as this day, and much more abundant. Because that's how they see it. It's just going to continue growing, right? It's Isaiah 49, and I'll read from verse 40, from verse 8. Because ultimately the Lord is going to destroy, this whole setup, right? Therefore, now hear this, thou that are given to pleasures, right? And from the top to the bottom of the pyramid, right, the people are just given to pleasures, right? That dwelleth carelessly, that saith in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me, right? Salakia. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment in one day, the loss of children, widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection. for the multitude of thy sorceries and the abundance of thine enchantments, because a lot of the mechanisms by which they get people to overconsume is through witchcraft. You know, they know the effect that certain words have on people. They call them mantras or spells. You know, they know the effect that certain colors have on people, certain vibrational frequencies, certain shapes. You know, the food industry is the same. There are certain tastes that gets you addicted so that you come back to buy more, right? It says, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me, right? Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it has perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am and none else. But through the Spirit of the Lord, these men are being exposed. The scripture says, how are the secrets of Esau searched up? The Lord is exposing all of that, you know? Let's get another precept here. And this is going to go into how we, as men and women, you know, brothers and sisters who are in the truth, combat this type of lifestyle, right? And live according to the scriptures. This is Luke 12, and I'll start from verse 15. And he said unto them, right, this is Yahushua speaking, take heed and beware of covetousness. Let's look up that word, covetousness. I believe I looked it up. Right? The word covetousness, pleonexia, it says greedy desire to have more. Covetousness, avarice. Right? Let's look up that word, avarice. It says greed, extreme greed for wealth or material gain. Right? So that's what it means. So Yahushua himself said what? Take heed, beware of covetousness, greediness, right? For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesses, right? So just like the Buddhists, the Stoics, they have this teaching that says that if you are attached to the material, right, then when you are faced with losing that material, you know, you're gonna bug out, right? The elder Ariella went into a lesson the other day going into how the flesh leads to darkness, the dark side, you know, and he was going into the movie Star Wars, you know, and how Master Yoda was explaining to young Anakin, you know, that fear, you know, of losing something in the flesh, fear of losing the material, whether that be your family or actual material wealth, right? Fear of losing that turns to anger. And then anger turns to hate, and then hate leads to suffering, right? So we in the truth, you know, we should see ourselves as pilgrims, and I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, and also, you know, onto the elect, you know, we should see ourselves as pilgrims, and we should remain detached, you know? Matter of fact, there's another precept that just came to mind that I'll get, right? It says, yeah, let me read it again. Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesses. Let me get that one. I believe it's 1 Corinthians 7, but I don't remember exactly how it goes. 1 Corinthians 7. Same thing that says, he that has a wife be as though that he has none. Right? Oh, here we go. 1 Corinthians 7:29. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none. They that weep as though they wept not. They that rejoice as though they rejoice not. And this is the point. They that buy as though they possess not. They that use this world as not abusing it. For the fashion of this world passeth away. Right? Let's jump on to another precept. Ecclesiastes 6 and 9. Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. I wanted to read this one in the NLT. It's a little bit clearer. Ecclesiastes 6 and 9 in the NLT. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Right? Philippians 4 and verse 11. Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. Right? I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. Right? I can do all things through Yahushua HaMashiach, who strengtheneth me. This is Hebrews 13 and verse 5. Let your conversation, which is your daily life, your walk in this truth, not just your speech, it's actually talking about your way of life. Let your conversation be without covetousness, going into that greedy desire, that lasciviousness, you know. Although lasciviousness specifically speaks about sexual covetousness, right? It says, and be content with such things as ye have. For he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. Now, the article goes into quite a bit more, right? But I'll post the link in the description box so brothers can continue the reading. Like I said, it's a really good read. You know, it's really edifying. You know, to go through this stuff so you can understand, you know, the mechanisms of consumerism. You know, so hopefully, you know, brothers and sisters, stuck with me for the video. Until next time, shalom.